We are talking 2021's Devil in the Woods, and this is directed by Terence Elliott and stars Tim Faraday and Danny Thompson. I say stars, they are the named cast here, although they are in very small roles and actually only have a couple of minutes screen time at most. So this is a very low budget movie. Apparently, according to IMDb, it's around £2,000, so very low budget. And it focuses on four friends who are trying to complete a college film project, and they need to make some type of film for their project, and the deadline is fast approaching. They haven't really done anything at the moment. Two of the four seem to be taking it somewhat seriously, whilst the other two just seem to kind of want to fool around and have a laugh. Inevitably, they end up trying to do some type of movie based in the woods, hence why they are there, but they seem to be sharing these woods with a group of cultists who have malicious intent, as it happens to be on some kind of blood moon. What will happen? You have to watch the movie and find out. Okay, so let's talk about what I think works in this movie. For such a low budget movie, you have to temper expectations and obviously understand what you're going to see on screen is never going to be anything of high production or anything like that. So with expectations in check, can I say anything in the plus column? There are a couple of shots where I do think it's moderately kind of effective in regards to having some interesting and maybe even slightly chilling sequences of these kind of like masked and robed cultists kind of in the woods, just sort of hanging around, lurking in the trees without really seeing anything and just kind of watching our kind of protagonists from time to time. There's one sequence, for example, where our group of protagonists are filming this scene, and it's only going back reviewing the footage they happen to notice one of these kind of cultists kind of standing in the trees kind of watching them. So I thought there are a couple of kind of like stalkery elements that I think were done reasonably kind of well here, and were somewhat kind of effective, kind of based on the kind of the budget and stuff. There is an attempt at kind of a little bit of a twist kind of towards the end, leading to a kind of a wider picture about maybe kind of what's kind of happening, and a couple of kind of red herrings, and that's kind of it. That's all I'm really going to say that I think works in this movie. Now, again, I'm going to preface what I say that doesn't work with the fact that it's such a low budget movie. But when you are working with such a low budget, I think you have to kind of work within your means, and obviously you can write an interesting kind of story, have characters that are interesting and things like this. But again, you're still having problems, and one of these problems is your acting is limited, shall we say. As I've mentioned, there are a couple of faces that I recognised. Tim Faraday's been in a variety of kind of British dramas and low budget movies, and Danny Thompson's fast becoming one of the kind of the modern screen queens of British low budget cinema. But their scenes are very brief, and although I would say Faraday certainly is an experienced actor, that doesn't make a lot of impact on the actual plot, really, to be honest with you. Their scenes are so brief so that you really are struggling to have them top and second billing, really. But the majority of the actors here, unfortunately, are either, I would imagine, friends of the director, very, very inexperienced, or they're kind of their first job or anything like that, because the acting, unfortunately, is a little bit of a mixed bag, shall we say. Not particularly convincing. There's one or two sequences where I feel they do a better job than others, but for the most part the acting isn't particularly strong. And then we have to talk about the technical elements here. Again, the elements here, and again I preface this by saying this is a low budget movie, but nonetheless, when you're watching a film, when you buy it, you're not going to go, I'll give them a pass on that because it's such a low budget film. No, the average person's not going to care that it's a low budget film. They just want to be entertained and have a good story. There are technical elements here that I feel just are problematic. The audio is not particularly strong. There's certain sequences where you're feeling it's not particularly picked up the actor's audio. particularly kind of well. There's some kind of dodgy editing here and there. And even some of the kind of the camera work is a little bit hit and miss and things like this. So it really doesn't seem like it's a particularly kind of well put together movie on a kind of a technical basis. But then we have to talk about the actual writing and the plot here, and this is to me where I think is the main problem, because there's really not a lot of plot in this film. I mean, we don't really have any idea about our antagonistic forces until really sort of over the halfway point, to be honest. It's just a film about these four unconvincing actors trying to make a some type of school project in the woods. That's the movie. And it's not even them doing anything, it's them talking about doing stuff. So the movie's really quite dull. Yeah, we have a group of four people, unconvincing actors and characters with not a lot of kind of like development or kind of backstory or flavour of who they are, talking about making a film, and then a little bit of footage actually trying to put this together. And then about the halfway mark, we see kind of like, you know, there's someone doing something with some type of cult books or something. And then we'll kind of, towards the end of the movie, we'll get them kind of actually snatching people and things like that. So, I mean, there's a little bit, we get a couple of sequences where the police are talking about missing persons, but they spend so long kind of going around the houses like that, you know, it's not really, I mean, you understand the context of, there's someone missing. Obviously, we are, having watched this movie and thinking, oh yeah, I know it's about cultists, you can kind of like, I get the impression that that's obviously what it's trying to kind of establish. But that could just be anything. It could literally be anything. There's one person that these police are kind of talking about they're going missing, and it doesn't really seem like there's any clues or anything suspicious, really. And let's talk about those cultists, because we have no idea about them. We have no idea what they're actually wanting, what they're actually kind of trying to do, who they're actually trying to sacrifice things to, or trying to kind of worship. No idea. There's literally no context to them whatsoever. So it's a really dull film, unfortunately. You know, there was an idea of having a kind of a movie about, you know, a film within a film, kind of making a film, you know, and then having these kind of strange, kind of paganistic, demonic cultists attack you and stuff. And there have been films that have actually done this similar sort of thing. I reviewed something called Night of the Bastards recently, which is a very similar kind of premise in some ways. But that was an interesting movie. It had interesting characters. This one doesn't. There's no real kind of idea about, you know, what's actually going on, who these people are. And our group of antagonists are so kind of thinly sketched out with, unfortunately, such kind of like amateurish performances, you simply don't care. There's a little bit of kind of like low budget kind of violence and bloodshed and stuff, which was okay. You know, I guess it's okay for the kind of the low budget it is, but it's really just like, there's nothing really here. I think you can have low budget films, even as low as this, and have them be somewhat entertaining, and you can kind of like, you know, you can kind of accept the grindhouse nature of it. But when you have a low budget film that ultimately is rather dull, it makes it so you can't really kind of enjoy it for its kind of schlocky goodness, because it's just like, well, it's just pretty dull. There's not a lot happens. The story's so thin. The characters are so kind of like barely kind of like developed. You can't think there's nothing to grab onto. So with a heavy heart, I'm going to give this one a 2 out of 10. It's a pretty forgettable film. Let me just say that. So have you heard of it? Would you see it? Do leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.